What drives a reserve study? Reserve expenses. The projects that need to happen, when they will occur, and how much they will cost all dictate how much cash you'll need and when you'll need it. But how do you know these projects are really going to happen? And who's to say we're not just making this all up? In this portion of our Breaking Down Reserve Expenses webinar, I'll draw back the curtain and talk about the guiding principles that drive the process of component selection, your governing documents, state law, and National Reserve Study standards. These are the rules of the road that, when followed, create a component list that identifies all the right projects that you need to start preparing for at your association, minimizing the chances that you'll be unpleasantly surprised. Well, thank you, Paige, and hello, hardworking managers and board members. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Now, the driver for reserves always starts with the expenses, how big they are, and when they are expected to occur. That's fundamentally the purpose of reserves, to set aside the right amount of cash so that the cash exists when it's time to get those projects done. So, as you mentioned in the poll earlier, a lot of you have concerns about missing components, estimates for cost and life suggestions, the estimates being online, and then just a lot of concerns for, is it all together? Well, that's a legitimate concern. So we want to help you understand and get a little more confidence with who defines those expenses, what defines those expenses, how are they established, and by what authority. The other part of it is what's typical, and how do you walk that fine line between preparing well, just having enough components that you're capturing all the appropriate upcoming projects without throwing in the entire kitchen sink and making the monthly assessments unreasonably high. I started out in this business because I was the president of my condo association. We didn't have the cash to do the roof project. I know we needed to start planning ahead after we got hit with that big piece of news, and we felt the same pressure you're likely feeling to not go overboard. How much do we plan for without too much? So in the next 30 minutes, I'll show you where the figures come from. I'll walk you through a few typical component lists and leave you with a better understanding of how that component list comes together and how a reserve study prepared according to National Reserve Study standards is going to set your association up for success. This is the outline we're going to follow in today's program, taking you through the issues that will get you familiar with the components appearing in your reserve study. And we start out with what guides the process. So in thinking about this, I want to start you with two images, the three circles on the left and National Reserve Study standards on the right. Those are the basic things going on. And you wonder, what are those circles about? Well, they illustrate that reserve planning is one part of a three-part system. Preventive maintenance is the minor ongoing projects that keep the building in tip-top shape. Reserve planning are the projects that deteriorate over time and need to be renewed, refurbished, replaced. And then there's infrastructure inspections, the things that don't get caught in the reserve inspection, things that take a specialist, an engineer or an architect to identify. Well, once you do the infrastructure inspections, then you know what more or what better preventive maintenance to do. And doing that preventive maintenance then helps your reserve projects last the maximum amount of time. And you can imagine that it becomes kind of a circular process where you do one, it helps the other, and that's what I want to suggest gives you success taking care of your building as it ages. And so those parts come together. Reserve planning is not the be-all, end-all. It has to come in light of preventive maintenance and infrastructure inspections. So let me spend a moment talking about preventive maintenance. Those are the planned maintenance projects that are carried out reactively or proactively at predetermined intervals. We should do this. It's important that we do this. It may be like the roof cleaning, it may be, or the gutter cleaning, it may be shampooing the carpets, sweeping the asphalt, all those things that you do to take care of the project to maximize the appearance and the life expectancy. It also may be some minor projects that you just know have to be done. You don't know exactly where they need to be done, but you send someone out with a paintbrush and you take care of staying on top of the rust to make sure that never gets a good bite on your association. Now, the question is, with these minor projects, are they operating or reserves? And that's where we start to look at National Reserve Study Standards, giving us some guidance on that important question. When does a minor operational project become a reserve project? So we have National Reserve Study Standards. They were first published in 1998, and one of the foundational issues of National Reserve Study Standards was the 4-part test that defines what you should fund through reserves. And as you can see here, it's common area maintenance responsibility, a life-limited project with a predictable remaining life, not random, and above a minimum cost. And that's what I want to talk about with respect to operating versus reserves. It needs to be a material cost to your association, and that often means 0.5% to 1% of your total budget, or the manager or board member's signature authority, something that they can say, darn, it's over $500, so I can't just authorize it myself. It's going to take a significant withdrawal of funds. But as you can imagine, that varies from association to association depending on how big they are. We have some associations where the manager has a $20,000 signature authority. We have some associations where that number is $250. So appreciate that you want to handle minor projects with operational miscellaneous funds, things that would unsettle the budget. You want to start pushing those over towards reserves. And another element is this 4-part test helps you identify those projects where the need and the schedule can be reasonably estimated. So if you can see it coming with a reasonable expectation, and if it's necessary for your common areas to sustain the association, then those are the kind of things you're going to see in reserves. Notice there's no arbitrary 30-year limit here. That is a line that someone drew in the sand a long time ago, and it has nothing to do with National Reserve Study Standards. So this is the framework that we're going to look at projects. So often when I do speaking engagement, people will come up to me afterwards and say, hey, what about this? Someone else will say, well, what about that? Third person will say, well, tell me about this project. Can we fund it through reserves? I'm going to come back to the same thing. We look at potential candidates for inclusion in the reserve study with this 4-part test. So that's how we identify and do arguably a good job of helping to see what projects are planned and what are appropriate to include in the reserve budget, and which are guesses on one hand, too far out, too unknown, too uncertain, or too small, too trivial, should be handled in the operational budget. So there's a lot of things going on here, but that 4-part test is key. Now, another part of it is understanding that the cost that we identify, you see an asterisk there. The asterisk is because it's supposed to be the current cost. We use inflation in the reserve study, but that's for the funding plan. We're identifying the costs involved in the component list. Those are all current costs, and they should be all inclusive, which means it includes all related shipping, engineering, design, permit, installation, construction oversight, management oversight, disposal, everything like that. So this is a big project, a rooftop installation, where installation and the engineering is going to be significant, probably permits also. This is a roof project where the disposal, you can see here they've rolled 2 dumpsters. The disposal is a big deal for tearing off a roof and getting prepared to put the new roof on. Now, the C that I haven't shown yet is yet another idea, another concept in National Reserve Study Standards. There is no requirement like for like. Picture here shows a couple of rooftop boilers. This property had a big 2 million BTU boiler. It fired on, created a lot of hot water, went to the tank, and then it cycled off, every time drawing a whole lot of natural gas. Now, what they found out is as they aged, that the needs of their association would be better served with 2 high-efficiency 1 million BTU boilers. That way, one boiler could fire off. It would be a net less energy draw, and rarely through the course of the year did they ever need both boilers firing at the same time. Reduce their energy usage, totally more efficiency for the association. Cost-wise, it was better on all the infrastructure within the association. So understand that we don't have a responsibility to replace exactly what's there, and that's appropriate for entry access systems and so many things that are technologically based. All right. Now, another factor is state law and governing documents. What does the law say in your state? And more local, what do your particular governing documents say? Well, The key here is common area. So that's the first thing that we need to figure out. Common area definitions are significant. They define the important line between what the association is responsible to maintain, what the owners are responsible to maintain. I trust many of you, hopefully most of you, have a responsibility matrix saying who's responsible for what, and that helps decide if it's the developer's responsibility, if it's the management company's responsibility, all these kinds of things to find out who's responsible for that thing. And then when it comes to state law, remember, your association is generally going to be compliant with the law when you're following National Reserve Study standards. Those National Reserve Study standards are there for a purpose and a reason. They hold the providers to a high standard, and they give consumers a consistently high quality product. So if you're following National Reserve Study standards, in I think almost every case, you'll be compliant with the law in your state. So what we're trying to do here are find those reserve projects, those reserve expenses that are reasonably predictable, that are the financial responsibility of the association, and that are larger than can be easily absorbed by the operating budget. We don't want anything just lingering out there that is going to unsettle the operating budget, cause you to say, oh, darn it, when that thing hits. We want the big projects to be captured and identified and planned and budgeted for in the reserve study. Okay, so that's what we're looking for and using that national standard 4-part test. And that will provide you with a consistent sweet spot, giving you a component list that identifies all the right projects, the big ones, reasonably predictable, that are going to be unsettling to the association otherwise. Those are the things we're trying to capture and plan for. And we just don't want you being surprised by projects that fundamentally should not be surprising. A roof failing after 20 years in plain sight, that should not be surprising. That is something that you should have 20 years of preparing for. And that's what we want to do with the reserve study. Help you not be surprised by the things that are not surprising. At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you want to join us in this mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see us address in a future video. Let's plan for your best future.